ready for the truth? Bring it on!
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Do you want the whole truth?
I don't think you're ready.
Governments don't control things. A government can't control the economy without controlling people.
It's Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Well, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Really glad you're here, right here on the AFR Talk Network. I'm Crane Durham. This is Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. And does it look like surrender? Remember the song by Trickster? I surrender. Don't do that, man. You're going to ruin the 80s and a few of the ballads. Don't do that to me. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on AFR Talk, and a lot to cover. I'm going to be hitting the fact that apparently American Family Association has been reportedly classified as a hate group. You all are aware of this through the great reporting of Todd Starnes. I was guest hosting earlier this morning, actually, and got to speak to Todd about the latest developments in that story. We'll bring you that story. It it stuns me. It really does. But the Christian gospel is now considered hate. I mean, that's what we're looking at. It's funny how people can be characterized and mischaracterized. And when we have actual haters, you want to see haters. Have a conservative show up to a college campus, then you'll see some hate and some anti-Semitism. Go to an Occupy Wall Street rally, and it's not just one person with a particular flag. It's a large group of people with some very crazy ideas and a lot of hate. They get their hate on. Yeah, I never knew. I've got to address this just a little bit because in a hate group, I always think, what do you think of? I think immediately of the Ku Klux Klan, okay? And I think about their white sheets and burning small T's and how ridiculous they are. And I think about the Jerry Springer shows when I used to watch Jerry Springer and they would be on the stage. And then I think of voting booths, poll stations, if you will, in Philadelphia. And people dressed up in their little fatigues and berets and sunglasses with billy clubs. And that would be the Black Panthers. And then I think of the Westboro Baptist Church, who I believe are absolutely loony, and any association with them is absurd when we talk about the American Family Association. I also find what they do hateful and disgusting. And it's interesting because there's been this move, and the Family Research Council obviously has gotten this, and the American Family Association has gotten this, and the idea that somehow we're going to be deemed a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is obviously a far-left group and has an agenda. I get that, but then we have our own military putting this in the training, and that it took a soldier to release this information through Todd Starnes and great reporting. And there have been developments on the front of, I believe, Roger Wicker's office specifically, and we'll bring you those a little later. But maybe this gives an opportunity right now. And by the way, tomorrow we will be talking to Tim Wildman. You said that as Tim Wildman. Yes, the Tim Wildman, American Family Association president. And yes, he often did come on the show on Fridays. We used to bat it around a little. Well, I'm going to try to get him back there because he's also the host of Today's Issues. He's a great writer. I've seen his work. Well, Canadian Free Press picks it up. And he'll be on tomorrow. But I thought this would be an opportunity right now to explain something about hate and about division, because we do have it in our country. We really do. Bottom of the hour, we're going to bring you totally up to speed on the shutdown, showdown, slim down, CR, and debt ceiling surrender. Are you calling it a surrender already? Well, we'll ask David Ferdoso of the Washington Examiner. He's written 3 books on President Obama. And we'll ask him how he thinks is it possible to win in a negotiation game with President Obama, and if so, how do you do that? Plus, he'll give us a detailed analysis, much like you received at the top of the hour through the Great American Family News, onenewsnow.com. Now, when you think of hate and you think about division, we do have a lot of it. And I remember when President Obama was elected, I remember broadcasting that night in St. Louis, station I used to work. And I remember saying, I'm going to give him his night. This is the President of the United States. People have elected him. And I didn't want him to fail, for the record. In the sense of any president, you don't want to fail. But I thought this will finally say, and many people are speculating on this, we're not going to play the race card. We're not going to do that. I think people voted because of his race, and I dismissed that for so long, and then it became apparent that people were actually doing that, voting because of somebody's race, voting for President Obama because of his race. Now, if you vote for somebody because of their race, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's a terrible standard, and I dare say idiotic. But we have a black president, and people were talking about the historic idea, and I thought, well, the race hustling business must be out of business because he really wasn't playing that game so much. Yet, we saw it more pronounced. We have a more divided America than we've had in the past before President Obama. We have a less respected America abroad and a less liked America, if you will. And those are polls going back over the last 4 or 5 years, giving the president time for his agenda to be put forth. But we saw division, and we also saw manipulation. We got the remember, never let a crisis go to waste. Do you remember that? Never let a crisis go to waste. And the exploitation of that. That quote, Rahm Emanuel, I believe, and his then chief of staff, and President Obama turning to the House Republicans turning to the Republicans in the first 100 days and basically saying, I won. And he got the stimulus. He said we needed this, he promised all these things. He said this is going to work. And hey, I didn't think for a minute it was going to work. It doesn't make any sense. It never has worked, but that's me putting in economic history and dynamic scoring or elements of that and human nature and recognizing when the state takes a greater role, it's going to increase dependence, and the state's an awful daddy, and if central planning actually worked, we would have the success stories of communism to speak of. But we don't. We always have it over the hill, over the next hill. And when we see failure, what must you do? You must divide. You know that. When President Obama weighed in on the Redskin issue in the NFL, I was really intrigued by this because I thought, okay, here's a man, you're going to ask the president, he's going to answer anything. That's what presidents do oftentimes. It's unfortunate, but true. But this is a great example of him putting himself there and talking about the issue of the term. And again, I was reminded how President Obama needs race. He needs the hyphen. Now, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, just hear me out here. He needs the hyphen. He needs the division, because without it, we have to point to the result. Following me? Yeah. It's not too tough to grade. We get it, okay? Yeah. But the results are failure, so he's got to go to the hyphen. He's got to go to the division. Yes. And there's another component to this. It's the fact that government spending is compassionate. There was some vandalism covered by the Gateway pundit, Jim Hoft, and he is back, by the way. Thank you, Jesus, for Jim Hoft's recovery, which is ongoing. Prayers are always appreciated for Jim Hoft, but he is recovering from his health ordeal. And it, in essence, was vandalism to say that conservatism is immoral. It's not compassionate. And I thought about the moral argument that I get through emails on occasion when I talk about government spending and the programs, administering programs. And people immediately accuse me, because I want to end Social Security as we know it, I want to end Medicare as we know it, as not caring about the people on those programs. I always make it clear I'm not talking about the people currently in the program or going into the program. I'm talking about giving choices and inevitably ending it because we don't have the funds to keep it going. The lockbox is really not there. And I talk about that a lot. Even with that caveat, even prefacing my remarks in that way, I still get, what would Jesus do? I mean, you're a Christian, Crane, but you obviously you're not practicing your faith because you're turning away people in need. I get this with immigration too, but that's a slightly different issue on the whole rule of law. I'll stick to the compassion of a government, a compassionate government, and that's measured through dollars. Yet every time it spends $1 into a particular program and provides a service, oftentimes 30%, 30 cents on the dollar, in light of the fact that when they can get things done, 30 cents on the dollar gets to the functioning of the administration of that service versus 60 to 90% on the dollar when you deal with organizations that are non-governmental. And I'm speaking of churches, I'm speaking of organizations like AFA. We maximize the dollars, its efficiency. So then I look at the result of this and I say, who are you helping? Who are you helping? It's not, the question is never to help somebody in need. We all want to help somebody in need. The question is how to do that. And this seems very easy, and you get it, right? How to fix the problem. You have a bridge, it has a hole in it, and people are falling through that hole, crashing down. When they get down there, they need health care. And the left's response to this is, hey, we need to invest in more doctors and more health care. The right's response and conservative response to it would be, hey, we need to fix the bridge. And yeah, of course you're going to take care of the people who have fallen through, but you got to fix the bridge. Fix the ripping bridge. Yet how is it we are in a place right now, almost through the looking glass? That means up is down, down is up. Because when we look at the results and we look at what was promised, there really isn't. They're not coming together. They're not garanimals. The tags don't match. And when we bring that up and we talk about fixing programs, reforming programs, not having the state become your daddy, because, by the way, your daddy is God. He created you. You are unique. He knows your gifts, and freedom will allow you to use those gifts. Daddy's state will determine them, and through healthcare determine when you live, how long you live, if you live, and if you die. That's what actually Benjamin Carson was speaking to, but I digress. Back to fixing the problem. It seems like a very logical, okay, we get it. If we measure any platform on results, and we did it honestly, without the distortion, without the hate, without the hyphens of Americans, that we're of red blood and, hey, we're Americans, equal under law, unless it comes with Obamacare and then we divide up, or unless we have different functions within our law for specific groups. That's the problem. But if we did have equality under law and we put forth solutions and programs and we had an honest conversation, would liberalism have a chance? Not for a second. So what does that tell us about the current debate? Well, on the flip side, we'll talk to David Ferdoso about this at the Washington Examiner. And we'll also bring you some of the news today that will give you and shed some light on just how distorted things are. And that's why we are dealing with the result we're dealing with currently with the CR and the debt ceiling agreements. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. AFR Talk.